Hello friends, I am Chevy. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? Hope it's fantastic. Everything here is good. Few workshop topics to talk about today. Looking for some advice or whatnot. I don't know what I'm looking for. I have been trying. The one skill that I still lack in woodworking is getting a 90-degree crosscut. I don't. I often end up cross-cutting by hand, especially for something small, because none of my tools, and even this is off, none of my tools, this one's okay, are servicing me all that well. And I've just never been able to get them dialed in. The miter saw we've already talked about. This saw in particular, do not recommend. If you're looking for metal cutting, sure, use that saw. Because when you're welding, you can fill holes and fill gaps. When you're woodworking, the saw has so much deflection, like it's so easy to deflect that it's basically impossible to get a straight cut off of it. So I don't use it. Like it just kind of sits there. I will use it for rough cutting, but the real reason that I use it for rough cutting is because I'm like it's got in-feed support, so there's a bench that I can lay a piece on, or I would be using a speed square in my circular saw, which is probably what I should use anyway. Probably faster and easier than trying to use that thing. So I can't use that for dimensioning lumber. Like I can use it for roughing in, but I can't really use it for finished cuts. So I use the table saw. Love my table saw. Absolutely love it. A bunch of you helped pitch in to buy it for me, and it's been an amazing tool. It really stepped up a lot of my workshop game, so I like that. And I will use it for crosscuts. I used to use a crosscut sled. I showed you this the other day. This is my gigantic crosscut sled. I believe this is the third attempt at a fence on this saw. They have all bowed, either concave, convex, which means that none of my cuts were coming off of this square. When they first built it, they would be perfect, and then they'll eventually bow. So the other day, I decided to do... no, we'll get to that. So I recently, last Christmas, the Christmas before last, I got the Craig Precision Miter Gauge, which I would say is anything but precision. I think that the miter gauge that came with my saw is more accurate than this. Not that this is inaccurate, it's that if you tighten it down, there's no play, which is nice. So you have a strong locking miter gauge here, which gives you good positive stops, like 1/10 of a degree, all that sort of stuff. The thing that I don't like about this miter gauge is this plastic set screw to set the tension in the miter slot. And I find these to be really problematic. I believe that my table saw's miter gauge also has these. But these in particular are very, very soft, and they're very, very loosely threaded in this hole. So it takes very little force. Like I could actually turn this. I think I just did actually. Yeah, I can turn this just with finger pressure. And what that means is when it's in my slot, the motion is rotating those things, and so they loosen up. It's super frustrating. This thing is, for all that it is. That's the biggest problem that I have. It does not stay very flat it doesn't stay tuned up. It's a constant nuisance to mess with it. I would much rather have one of those cammed things that you can adjust from up here. Adjusting these is a pain in the ass. I would much rather have the top loaded cam. So if I could replace this miter bar on this thing, I would, because I believe that this mechanism, this part, all of this stuff, the flip stop, that's all great. It's everything else that sucks. I also need to move this bolt kind of clear over here. This MDF is not as stable as people like to think it is. And so there's some flex here, which means that if I'm not pulling tight, the piece isn't square. So I'm not getting square cuts off of this. I'm getting better cuts than that miter saw. So I have used this for some finished stuff because in reality, I don't work on projects that need to be, measured in radians or something. Like, I can get away with a degree off. It's fine. It'll be fine. So, the other day, I glued together this fence. 3 pieces of 3/4 inch plywood. It is completely perfectly flat. I have a straight edge to check. It is perfectly flat. And I hope that it stays that way forever. The problem is, when I glued this thing together, I wasn't really thinking straight. I set it down on the bench, started to clamp it, then I turned it on its side. Regardless, I didn't take care of any of the glue squeeze out. So there's glue all over both edges of this, and I need to get a clean reference face so that I can screw this to my sled so that it will stay 90 degrees this way. Without a clean reference edge, this is not good because sometimes I cut vertical pieces. You understand. So I thought, well, maybe I can run that across the joiner. I think that's a terrible idea. I think that I need to figure out a way to clean this up on the table saw. What I'm thinking is, this is where I need your help. Either I've never built a confession time. This is confession time. I still don't have a jointing jig or whatever you want to call it. Essentially a jig where you could have a board like this that's straight and parallel. You could put this on there, clamp it down, and then this board is what's running up against your fence. I should probably show it a little better. This board is what's running up against the fence, and this gets cut. I should probably just build one of those. That's what I think I'm going to do for this. I bought, this is the confession, years ago, I had those little like toggle clamps on my wish list, and I think Jonathan bought them for me. I've still not used them. They were intended to do something like that, to make that and or a tapering jig, some sort of thing like that. The biggest issue I have with that is, this is 3 pieces of 3/4 inch plywood, so screwed together, I guess it's only just a little over 2 inches. So I think I'm okay. I think that I could have a 1/2 inch piece of plywood be my sled, and that'll cut. And that way I have a 90-degree cut referencing my front face. And then I can cut this other side. I think that's what I'm going to do. So maybe I don't need advice. I just needed to talk through it. The other option would be to use the jointer. I think that's a terrible option on plywood, but I did spend quite a bit of time the other day setting my jointer back up. I had noticed I was getting some sniping on the ends of my boards, and that's usually caused by the outfeed bed being too low, and that's exactly what was wrong. The outfeed bed was about 1/16 of an inch low. Like, I don't know how it got that way, but just I need to probably check that more often. So I bought the straight edge so that I can check it more often and make sure. I also found out that my beds were not parallel with each other. They were kind of sitting like this. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but that causes a problem when you're going up and then down. That'll cause you're getting bows in your boards. So I set the joiner up again yesterday or the other day, and I thought I'll run this through there. I think that's a terrible plan. I'm not going to do that. I think it'll blow this really cheap veneer off. So I think I'm going to do the sled thing. But I have a plan. That's a good thing. I need to get this done because I'm tired of not cutting straight cuts. I was going to replace this. Last weekend I found a radial arm saw that somebody was selling, and I thought about it. I really thought, and I just decided against it. Maybe I don't even need that at all. I mean, like I said earlier, I'll use a miter box and a handsaw before I would use that thing, and I don't know that a radial arm saw is going to do me a whole lot better. But what I do know is I'm going to be cutting tenons on a bunch of the pieces of the workbench, and I would like to have something registering at 90 degrees so I can cut those on a table saw quickly, just nibble them away. So that's the plan. Yeah, workshop stuff. Oh, one more thing. I have the Delta contractor cast iron mobile, I don't know what it's called, what number it is. I will attempt to remember to put the number on the screen. This is the insert plate for that saw. It's a very thin piece of metal, And because of the way that the insert plate sits in there, I've never bothered to make a zero clearance insert because I would have to cut this shape out perfectly, and then I would have to like recess pockets where this could sit, and it just seemed like a complete pain. So I ordered some. I ordered some from Amazon. These are called Zero Cert. I do not believe Zero Cert was the name. Zero Cert was in the listing. I searched for this by my table saw. This was years ago. It's been on my wish list forever. It says it fits the Delta 36 5000 T2, so maybe that's what I have. These things. This is an awesome product. I think for $50 you get 3 of them. So honestly, it's worth more. My time is worth more than $15 an insert to try to figure out how to make this out of whatever thickness wood. These things have a nice machined hole. They have top holes so you can still get to the adjusters. They have the recesses in the bottom. There's a slot for the riving knife. There's a recess for the blade so that when you first put this in, that blade doesn't lower very far. When you first put this in, you're not hitting the blade, and then you can run the blade up. These things are fantastic. So if you have this saw or the rigid or whatever, maybe check out Zero Cert and see if they have inserts for your saw, especially if you have this issue where there's this real thin lip that actually holds the thing in place. I highly recommend it. This was a fantastic addition to the shop. Really, really happy to have those. So there you go. Some workshop stuff. What have you been working in your workshop lately? Any of you? I haven't. I mean, obviously you've seen what I've been doing. Let me know in the comments what you've been up to. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know sounds smart is precipitous. It is an adjective meaning a steep drop, precarious position, unstable situation, volatile market, or rapid and sudden change. Investors were stung Friday by the precipitous drop in the Dow. Precipitous. Precipitous. I think you could have just said a rapid and sudden change, and it would have included all those previous things. A steep drop is a rapid and sudden change in terrain, right?